Welcome to eOnline, your guide to learning English as a second or foreign language. Today, we are going to learn about phonology. In this lesson you will learn about the nature of English phonology, the sounds, in terms of their physical properties and characteristics, the differences between phonemes and allophones, and the nature of elision in the English language. What is phonology? It is the scientific study of the sound system. It is about the use and organization of speech sounds or sounds of natural languages, and sometimes it is called the grammar of sounds. This is almost never taught in language classes. For example, in English, we cannot have the cluster elp at the beginning of the words, but we can have pool. Why? There are rules that govern the combination of sounds in English. Look at the order in which the sound system is received and interpreted by the listener. Phonetics is the study of sounds in and of themselves. No reference to any specific language is necessary. On the other hand, phonology is the way that a given language treats those sounds. This requires reference to specific language. You may not be able to study phonology separated from specific language. Phonology is the basic unit of sound that is able to distinguish one word from another in a given language. It can be used to contrast meaning. The term phoneme is usually restricted to vowels and consonants. However, linguists extend its application to cover phonologically relevant differences of pitch, stress, and rhythm. This is different from a letter. A letter is a unit of writing, not speech. Allophones are a kind of phoneme that changes its sound based on how a word is spelled. Think of the letter T and what kind of sound it makes in the word tar compared with stuff. It's pronounced with a more forceful, clipped sound in the first example than it is in the second. Linguists use special punctuation to designate phonemes. The sound of an L, for instance, is written as L. Substituting one allophone for another allophone of the same phoneme doesn't lead to a different word, just a different pronunciation of the same word. For this reason, allophones are said to be non-contrastive. For example, consider the word tomato. Some people pronounce this word tomato, while others pronounce it tomato. The definition of tomato doesn't change, regardless of whether it's pronounced with a hard A or a softer tone. For non-native English speakers, allophones and phonemes prove a special challenge. A letter that has one pronunciation in the native language may sound utterly different in English. For example, the letters B and V have distinct phonemes in English, which is to say, they sound different when pronounced. However, in Spanish, those same two consonants are pronounced similarly. Pay attention to the variation in sounds, using the case of tar in American English as shown in the figure. Here are the allophonic rules for the sounds of S. Elision is the omission of a phoneme in speech. It is common in casual conversation. It may also refer to the omission of an unstressed vowel, consonant, or syllable. In print, this is indicated by an apostrophe. It is easy to find examples of elision, but very difficult to state rules that govern which sounds may be elided and which may not. Elision of vowels in English usually happens when a short, unstressed vowel occurs between voiceless consonants, e.g. in the first syllable of perhaps, potato, the second syllable of bicycle, or the third syllable of philosophy. It is very important to note that sounds do not simply disappear, like a light being switched off. A transcription such as acts for acts implies that the T phoneme has dropped out altogether, but detailed examination of speech shows that such effects are more gradual. In slow speech the T may be fully pronounced, with an audible transition from the preceding K and to the following S, while, in a more rapid style, it may be articulated, but not given any audible realization, and in very rapid speech it may be observable, if at all, only as a rather early movement of the tongue blade toward the S position. An elision is the omission of a sound for phonological reasons. Cause, also spelled cos from because, Faucastle from forecastle, or iced tea from iced tea, in which E and D is pronounced T but omitted because of the immediately following T. Ice cream is an extremely common term, and no one these days, I believe, would be tempted to describe the confection as iced cream, and yet this was its original description. With time, however, the ed ending eroded. In pronunciation, it would have been swallowed very early, and eventually, this was reflected in the way it was written. Look at how elision was used in the following samples. Be able to give the differences between phonetics and phonology in one paragraph. For task 2, in a paragraph, be able to discuss what you have learned about phonemes, allophones, and elisions. Be able to give samples for each of those. This time, let us get to know morphology. This lesson hopes for you to be able to identify what morphology is. Explain different ways in which words are formed and give examples of words that were formed based on the given word formation samples. A morpheme is a short segment of language that meets 3 basic criteria. It is a word or a part of a word that has meaning. 2. It cannot be divided into smaller meaningful segments without changing its meaning or leaving a meaningless remainder. 3. It has relatively the same stable meaning in different verbal environments. There are 2 types of morphemes: free morphemes and bound morphemes. Free morphemes can stand alone with a specific meaning, for example, eat, date, week. Bound morphemes cannot stand alone with meaning. Morphemes are comprised of 2 separate classes called A bases or roots and B affixes. A base or root is a morpheme in a word that gives the word its principal meaning. An example of a free base morpheme is woman in the word womanly. An example of a bound base morpheme is scent in the word descent. Once again, these are the differences between the bound and free morphemes. How are words formed? Different types of word formation processes are employed to create new words. However, all word formation processes basically bring either inflectional or derivational changes. Therefore, inflection, also called inflection, and derivation, are the 2 core processes of word formation. Inflection differs from derivation to the following extent. These are the differences between inflection and derivation. It is a word formation process wherein an affix is attached to a root, also called stem, base, to form a new word. A root is a free morpheme, also called unbound morpheme, that can appear alone. On the other hand, an affix is a bound morpheme, which never occurs by itself, but is always attached to some free morpheme and can be either inflectional or derivational. An inflectional affix modifies the form or grammatical category of a word, i.e., tense, person, number, gender, case, etc. For example, rat to rats. Contrariwise, a derivational affix modifies the parts of speech of the root, while leaving the grammatical category unchanged. In this way, there is a change of meaning of the root. For example, write to writer. An affix can be either derivational or inflectional. Derivational affixes serve to alter the meaning of a word by building on a base. In the examples of words with prefixes and suffixes above, the addition of the prefix unto healthy alters the meaning of healthy. The resulting word means not healthy. The addition of the suffix e and r to garden changes the meaning of garden, which is a place where plants, flowers, etc., grow, to a word that refers to a person who tends a garden. It should be noted that all prefixes in English are derivational. However, suffixes may be either derivational or inflectional. Prefixation. In this morphological process, words are formed by adding an affix to the front of a root. The type of affix used in this process is referred to as prefix. For example, un plus tidy equals untidy. Suffixation. In this morphological process, words are formed by adding an affix to the end of a root. The type of affix used in this process is referred to as suffix. For example, fear plus less equals fearless. This refers to the change of function, or parts of speech of a word, without adding an affix. Conversion is also called zero derivation, or null derivation, since the functional change is brought about by supplementing an invisible affix. Sometimes, it is also called functional shift. Typically, conversion is made from noun to verb, and from verb to noun. Less frequently, conversion is also done from adjective to verb and adjective to noun. Look at the following samples of conversion. Back formation is a morphological process in which a new word is created by extracting affixes from another word. In this way, it is the reverse of affixation, in which affixes are added. Back formation is also different from clipping, since it brings a change in the parts of speech or the word's meaning. For example, the noun insertion has been back formed into verb insert by removing the suffix ion. As the name suggests, clipping is the word formation process, in which a word is reduced to a shorter form. With a sharp contrast to back formation, clipping keeps the original word meaning intact. These words are very common in everyday speech. For instance, lab is the clipped form of laboratory. There are 4 types of clippings. Back clipping, also called final clipping. Apocope, it involves the truncation of end of a word, as in ad from advertisement. Fore clipping, also called initial clipping. Aphoresis, it is the removal of the beginning of a word as in phone from telephone. Middle clipping, also medial clipping. Syncope, it is the extraction of the beginning and end of a word as in flu from influenza. Complex clipping is removing multiple parts from multiple words, as in cablegram from cable telegram. Also called composition, by this process 2, or more than 2 words, are combined together to create a single word, having a single idea and function. In English, there are compound nouns, compound adjectives, and compound verbs. Customarily, compound words are spelled as a single word, or as 2 or more hyphenated words, and even as 2 or more separate words. For example, life plus style equals lifestyle. Mother plus in plus law equals mother-in-law. Shopping plus mall equals shopping mall. There are no specific rules for hyphenated compounds. Generally, some new and original compound nouns are hyphenated, but the hyphen is ignored when they become more familiar. However, there are some compound adjectives that are always hyphenated. For instance, state of the art. The hyphen is often retained when 2 vowels come together, such as cooperation. Hyphens are often used to tell the ages of people and things, for example, 10-year-old. The general rule is that words are combined with hyphens to avoid confusion. This refers to the words that are adopted from other languages. There are 2 types of borrowings. Loan word, by this process, a word is borrowed from another language, without translating it into the target language. For example, the phrase tour de force is borrowed directly from French, which means a masterly or brilliant feat. Loan translation, also known as calque, a morphological process wherein a word or phrase from another language is borrowed by literally translating it into the target language. For example, the phrase point of view has been translated into English from the French phrase point of view. Also called invention, is a morphological process by which new words are invented. Sometimes, popular trademark names of various products are adopted by people so extensively that they ultimately become the everyday words of language. Blending, also called portmanteau, is a morphological process in which the parts of 2 or more words are combined together to form a new word. Usually, the parts consist of the beginning of one word and the end of the other words. Typically, the meaning of the blended word reverberates with the meanings of the original words. For example, breakfast plus lunch equals brunch. Motor plus hotel equals motel. However, blending should not be confused with compounding, which combines 2 words without truncation of parts of the roots of the blended words. These words are formed with the initial letters, or each of the major parts of a word, or a longer phrase. With a few exceptions, acronyms are usually capitalized. Some linguists confuse acronyms with initialisms, which are also abbreviations that are formed in the similar manner as the former. In essence, there is a sharp difference between the 2. In language, an acronym is pronounced as a single word rather than just a sequence of individual letters, which is the characteristic of initialisms. Look at the samples in this slide. Reduplication, also called cloning, doubling, duplication, repetition, Tautonym is a word formation process, in which a new word is created by repeating all, or part of a root, or a stem, often with a change of vowel or initial consonant. Reduplication is not a major means of creating lexemes in English, but it is perhaps the most unusual one. Based on their usage, the techniques of reduplication could be classified in the following manner. Repetition without change, bye-bye, tick-tick. Rhyming reduplication, ding-dong, super-duper, bow-wow. Repetition with change of vowel, tip-top, chit-chat, flip-flop, ping-pong, dilly-dally, wishy-washy. Repetition with change of initial consonant, teeny-weeny. Now, here is your task.